Grammarly.com Unlimited Drama Series.
What kind of person hides an insult inside a gift meant for your wife and laughs when you notice it? How does a calm man respond when he realizes he wasn't ignored by accident, but erased on purpose? This is how I uncovered the truth and why I chose to end it publicly. My name is Beck Darren, and for 44 years, I've been the kind of man people forget is in the room. Not invisible exactly, but background noise. The one who listens while others talk, who notices while others perform. I've learned that being underestimated is sometimes an advantage, especially when people think you're not paying attention. But I'm always paying attention. The evening started like any other Thursday. Leora was in the shower, steam creeping under the bathroom door, while I cleaned up after dinner. The kitchen held that comfortable quiet of routine. Dishes clicking softly in the sink, the hum of the refrigerator, the distant sound of water running upstairs. These were the moments I treasured. Ordinary, peaceful, hours. The flowers sat on the counter where Leora had left them, still wrapped in brown paper. White lilies and pale roses, elegant in their simplicity. She'd mentioned they were from Maris, her best friend since college, but hadn't said why. Maris didn't usually send flowers without occasion, but I'd learned not to question the intricate social mathematics of women's friendships. I filled the crystal vase, our wedding gift from Leora's grandmother, with water and began arranging the stems. The lilies went in first, their heavy heads requiring support, followed by the roses. As I adjusted the final stem, something dark caught my eye, tucked deep among the flowers, almost hidden against the white petals. A ribbon. Not the decorative kind florists usually include, but something else entirely. I pulled it free and my stomach dropped. It was a mourning ribbon, the kind used at funerals. Black silk with silver text that read, "In loving memory." But there was no name, no date, just the generic phrase, pristine and deliberate. I stood there holding it, water dripping from my fingers onto the counter, trying to process what I was seeing. Why would a mourning ribbon be hidden in flowers meant as a gift? The placement wasn't accidental. It had been carefully tucked behind the stems, positioned where it would only be discovered during arrangement. Footsteps on the stairs announced Leora's return. I quickly photographed the ribbon with my phone, then slipped it into my pocket as she entered the kitchen, hair damp and smelling of lavender shampoo. "Oh, you arranged them?" she said, moving to admire the vase. "Aren't they beautiful?" Maris said she saw them and thought of me. "They're lovely," I agreed, keeping my voice neutral. "Special occasion?" Leora laughed, a sound I'd heard thousands of times, but tonight it carried an odd note. Maris said the funniest thing when she gave them to me. She winked and said, "No one will ever know." Isn't that just like her? So dramatic about everything. The laughter continued, light and practiced, and I realized I was hearing an echo. Maris had laughed first, and Leora was unconsciously mimicking it. They were sharing a private joke, and somehow I was the punchline. "No one will ever know what?" I asked. "Oh, you know Maris. She probably just meant no one would know she spent too much on flowers." But Leora's eyes didn't quite meet mine, and her hand fluttered to her throat, a gesture I recognized as discomfort. I nodded and smiled, playing the role of the oblivious husband. But as I watched Leora admire the arrangement, the mourning ribbon seemed to burn in my pocket. Someone wanted me to find it. Someone wanted me to know that in their mind, something or someone was dead. That night, lying in bed while Leora slept peacefully beside me, I stared at the ceiling and made a decision. I wouldn't confront anyone. I wouldn't demand explanations or create drama. Instead, I would do what I did best: observe, document, and understand. Because if someone thought they could erase me quietly, they were about to learn how wrong they were. The next morning, I sat in our neighborhood cafe, with coffee growing cold, as I reconstructed years of interactions I'd previously dismissed as harmless. Memory is funny. Once you know what to look for, patterns emerge from what seemed like random noise. Maris Hale had been part of our lives for nearly 2 decades. Leora's college roommate turned lifelong best friend. At 40, she was polished in the way of women who've learned to weaponize charm. Always perfectly dressed, always ready with the right comment, always somehow central to every gathering. I'd admired her confidence, even envied it sometimes. But now, reviewing our history with new eyes, I saw something else entirely. The restaurant patio 3 months ago, Maris had insisted on sitting between Leora and me, claiming she needed to steal Leora away for girl talk. When I'd tried to contribute to their conversation about a mutual friend's divorce, Maris had smiled sweetly and said, "Oh, Beck, you're so lucky you don't have to worry about these complicated social things. Leora handles all that for your family, doesn't she?" The comment had stung, but I'd let it pass. Now I recognized it as a boundary test. How much diminishment would I accept before pushing back? I opened my phone and scrolled through family photos from the past 2 years. In group shots, Maris consistently positioned herself closer to me than necessary, her hand on my arm or shoulder, in ways that looked friendly but felt invasive. In photos of just the three of us, she often stood between Leora and me, literally inserting herself into our couple space. Our family text thread told a similar story. Maris frequently spoke for Leora rather than with her. Leora's too polite to say it, but she really needs a girls' weekend. I told Leora she deserves better than takeout again. She works too hard to cook when she gets home. Leora mentioned feeling overwhelmed. I think she needs more support at home. Each message positioned Maris as Leora's advocate, and me as inadequate. Individually, they seemed caring. Collectively, they formed a narrative of rescue, Maris saving Leora from a marriage that wasn't meeting her needs. The most telling pattern was in our group messages about plans. Maris had a gift for creating situations where I was excluded. Ladies' lunch Sunday? Beck, you probably have sports to watch anyway. Wine tasting Saturday? Probably not your thing, Beck. Spa day for Leora's birthday. Finally, some relaxation without having to worry about anyone else's needs. I'd never protested these exclusions, assuming they were natural expressions of female friendship. But the language was surgical in its precision. Each invitation included a preemptive dismissal of my potential interest, making objection seem petty. Looking at months of these messages, I saw the architecture of isolation. Maris wasn't just claiming Leora's time. She was training both of us to see my absence as normal, even preferable. The mourning ribbon suddenly made perfect sense. In Maris's mind, I was already dead, a non-entity whose opinions didn't matter, whose presence was barely tolerated. The ribbon was her private celebration of my successful erasure, hidden where only I would find it. A secret joke about my irrelevance. But here's what Maris didn't understand about quiet men. We see everything. We remember everything. And when we finally act, it's with the accumulated weight of every slight, every dismissal, every moment we chose patience over pride. I finished my coffee and walked home, the morning sun warm on my face. For the first time in months, I felt completely calm. Clarity has that effect. Once you understand the game being played, you can decide whether to keep playing by someone else's rules. The park bench overlooking Miller's Pond had always been my thinking spot. Surrounded by oak trees and the gentle sound of water, it was where I came when problems needed sorting. As I sat there Friday afternoon, watching ducks glide across the surface, Maris's laughter echoed in my memory. No one will ever know. The phrase had haunted me for 2 days. Know what exactly? That she'd hidden a mourning ribbon in flowers meant for my wife? That she'd been systematically undermining my marriage for years? That she found my erasure amusing enough to joke about? I pulled out my phone and scrolled to the ribbon photo. In daylight, The image was even more damning. The black silk stark against white petals, clearly deliberate in its placement. This wasn't a florist's mistake or a supply mix-up. Someone had specifically requested this edition. 20 minutes later, I stood in Petals and Stems, the upscale flower shop downtown. The owner, Mrs. Chen, greeted me with professional warmth. "I wanted to thank you for the beautiful arrangement my wife received yesterday," I said, showing her a photo of the finished vase. "The white lilies and roses? It was a gift from her friend." Mrs. Chen smiled. "Oh yes, I remember that order." The woman was very specific about the presentation. Specific how? She wanted something tucked among the stems. Said it was a private message for whoever arranged them. A little unusual, but customers sometimes include personal touches. My heart rate stayed steady, but my mind sharpened. Did she explain what kind of message? Mrs. Chen's expression grew slightly uncomfortable. She said it was an inside joke, something only a particular person would understand. She seemed to find it quite amusing. Did she ask if it would be noticed? Actually, yes. She wanted to make sure it would be discovered during arrangement but not immediately visible in the bouquet. She was very concerned about the timing. I thanked Mrs. Chen and left, walking slowly back to my car. The confirmation felt like a puzzle piece clicking into place. Maris had orchestrated every detail, the hidden placement, the timing, the private joke. She'd even worried about whether I'd find her little gift. In my car, I opened my notes app and typed, "This was never about sympathy." The mourning ribbon wasn't random cruelty or momentary spite. It was a calculated message, designed to let me know that in Maris's world, I was already dead and buried. She'd hidden it carefully, ensuring only I would find it, then shared the joke with my wife. The laughter I'd heard was their mutual amusement at my unwitting participation in my own funeral. But Maris had made a critical error. She'd assumed that a quiet man would remain quiet, that someone accustomed to being overlooked would accept being erased. She'd mistaken patience for passivity, restraint for weakness. As I drove home, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years. Perfect clarity about my next move, not anger. Anger was messy and unpredictable. Not revenge. Revenge required emotional investment I wasn't willing to make. Instead, I felt the calm satisfaction of a man who'd finally seen the complete picture and knew exactly how to respond. The game was about to change, and Maris had no idea she'd just armed her opponent. That evening, I found Leora in our home office, laptop open, working on lesson plans. As a high school English teacher, she spent evenings crafting discussions about character motivation and narrative truth. The irony wasn't lost on me. "Can I ask you something about Maris?" I said, settling into the chair beside her. Leora looked up, immediately defensive. "What about her?" "Nothing accusatory. I'm just trying to understand some patterns I've noticed." Her shoulders relaxed slightly. "What kind of patterns?" I pulled up our family text thread on my phone. "Look at these messages from the past few months. Read them as if you're grading student work. What narrative voice do you see?" Leora took the phone, her teacher instincts engaging. She scrolled quietly, and I watched her expression shift from casual interest to focused analysis. "She speaks for me a lot," she said slowly. "What else?" "She positions herself as protective, like she's defending me from something." "From what?" Leora handed back the phone, uncomfortable now. "I don't like where this is going, Beck. I'm not attacking her. I'm asking you to see what I see." I showed her the photo patterns next. Images where Maris consistently placed herself between us, where her body language claimed space that wasn't offered. Then the exclusion messages, the preemptive dismissals, the careful architecture of my irrelevance. "She's been isolating me," I said simply. "Not dramatically, not obviously, but systematically. And I think she's been training you to see that isolation as normal." Leora was quiet for a long time, scrolling through evidence that painted a picture she'd never considered. "She's my best friend, Beck. She loves me." "I believe she does, but what does she think of me?" She thinks you're..." Leora stopped, realizing the trap in her words. "She thinks I'm what?" "Boring. Predictable." She says I could do better. The admission came out in a whisper. And what do you think when she says that? I defend you, always. But part of you wonders if she's right. Leora's silence was answer enough. I pulled out my phone and showed her the ribbon photo. This was hidden in the flowers she sent you. I found it when I arranged them. Leora stared at the image, her face cycling through confusion, recognition, and finally horror. A mourning ribbon? She told you no one will ever know, and you both laughed. What did you think she meant? I thought she meant no one would know how much she spent, or that she took them from some corporate event, or Leora's voice trailed off as understanding dawned. She meant no one would know she'd declared me dead. The words hung in the air between us. Leora set down the phone with shaking hands. She asked me about our marriage last week, she said quietly. Whether I was happy, whether I felt supported. She said I seemed tired, that I
I saw her get in. I saw everything.
Let me explain.
Watch more on Grammarly.com.
deserved someone who noticed me more. What did you tell her? I said every marriage has quiet periods, that we were fine. But she kept pushing, saying I was making excuses, that I'd gotten so used to being overlooked, I didn't recognize it anymore. And what did you think when she said that? Leora looked at me with tears in her eyes. I thought maybe she was right. I thought maybe I had settled for being ignored. The honesty hit like a physical blow, but I kept my voice steady. Do you feel ignored? Sometimes, but not by you, Beck. By myself. I stopped asking for what I needed, because it felt easier than negotiating. Maris said that was your fault, that you'd trained me to expect less. But that's not true. No, it's not. I trained myself, and somehow, she convinced me you were the problem. We sat in silence as the full scope of Maris's manipulation became clear. She hadn't just been undermining me. She'd been convincing Leora that her own self-diminishment was my fault. Every time Leora felt small or overlooked, Maris was there to redirect that feeling toward our marriage, positioning herself as the solution to problems she'd helped create. What do we do now? Leora asked. We tell the truth, I said. All of it. Publicly. Beck, I can't lose her friendship over this. You already have. The question is whether you want to lose it quietly or honestly. Leora closed her laptop and looked at me with the expression I remembered from our early dating years. Direct, unguarded, real. Show me everything, she said. If we're going to do this, I need to understand exactly what's been happening. For the next 2 hours, we built a timeline. Messages, photos, incidents, patterns, everything that had seemed innocent individually, but formed a clear picture collectively. Leora added context I'd missed. Private conversations where Maris had questioned my commitment, suggested I took her for granted, wondered aloud whether she'd married too young to know what she really wanted. She's been preparing me to leave you, Leora said finally. Not pushing exactly, but preparing the ground. And the mourning ribbon was her way of celebrating that the preparation was working. By midnight, we had a complete picture of 2 years of systematic manipulation. More importantly, we had a plan. Saturday morning, we sat in Nadia Brooks's office downtown. At 38, Nadia was the kind of digital communications consultant who specialized in reputation management, both protecting it and strategically dismantling it. Leora had found her through teacher networks, someone who understood the delicate balance between truth-telling and professional survival. Let me make sure I understand, Nadia said, reviewing our documentation. Your wife's best friend has been systematically undermining your marriage, culminating in hiding a mourning ribbon and flowers meant for your wife. And you want to expose this publicly? We want to tell the truth publicly, I corrected. The exposure is a byproduct. Nadia leaned back in her chair. Why not handle this privately? Confront her directly, set boundaries, end the friendship quietly? Leora answered. Because quiet is what allowed this to happen. She counted on us being too polite, too conflict avoidant, too concerned about appearances to call her out. Silence protects manipulation. And you're both prepared for the fallout? Mutual friends taking sides, social media drama, potential professional complications? We're prepared for honesty, I said. Whatever comes with that, we'll handle. Nadia opened her laptop. Then let's build something that can't be dismissed or deflected. For 3 hours, we crafted our statement. Not an accusation or attack, but a careful presentation of facts that allowed readers to draw their own conclusions. The mourning ribbon photo would lead, followed by the florist confirmation, then the message patterns and exclusion tactics. The key, Nadia explained, is letting the evidence speak. No emotional language, no character assassination, just documented behavior and clear timelines. People are smart. They'll connect the dots. We wrote 2 versions, one from me, one joint. The joint statement felt right. This wasn't about me defending myself, but about us defending our marriage from someone who'd been attacking it systematically. The final post read, "Yesterday I found a mourning ribbon hidden in flowers my wife received from her best friend. When I asked the florist about it, she confirmed it was specifically requested and positioned to be found during arrangement. The giver called it a private message and an inside joke." This discovery prompted us to review 2 years of interactions we'd previously dismissed as normal friendship dynamics. The attached screenshots and photos show a clear pattern of isolation tactics, exclusion strategies, and systematic undermining of our marriage. We're sharing this not for drama or sympathy, but because silence enables manipulation. When someone works to convince a wife that her husband is inadequate, then celebrates that effort with hidden funeral symbols, the behavior deserves sunlight. We've chosen transparency over politeness, honesty over social comfort. Some will call this an overreaction. We call it accountability. The flowers remain beautiful. The ribbon is gone. Below the text, we arrange the evidence chronologically. The ribbon photo, florist confirmation screenshot, message patterns showing exclusion and speaking for Leora tactics, and photos documenting inappropriate physical positioning over time. This is thorough without being vindictive, Nadia said, reviewing the final version. It presents facts and lets readers form opinions. Legally, you're on solid ground, right? Everything is documented and verifiable. What kind of response should we expect? Leora asked. Initially, shock. Then people will start connecting their own dots, remembering times they witnessed this behavior, recognizing similar patterns in their own relationships. Maris will likely deny, deflect, then eventually retreat when the evidence proves overwhelming. And our mutual friends? The healthy ones will appreciate your honesty. The ones who prefer comfortable lies over difficult truths, well, you'll learn something valuable about them too. We scheduled the post for Sunday evening, enough time for weekend social media browsing, but late enough to avoid immediate confrontation. I slept better that night than I had in weeks, the weight of secrets finally lifting. Truth has its own momentum. Once released, it doesn't need anger or aggression to be effective. It simply exists, undeniable and clear, forcing people to choose between comfortable illusions and uncomfortable reality. By Sunday evening, we'd chosen reality. Soon, everyone else would have to choose too. Sunday at 8 p.m., I hit publish and closed the laptop. Leora and I sat on our couch, the flower arrangement visible on the kitchen counter through the doorway. The vase caught the evening light, white petals luminous and peaceful. No black ribbon hiding among them now, just beauty without deception. "How do you feel?" Leora asked. "Calm," I said, and meant it. My phone buzzed with the first notification, then another. Within minutes, the responses were pouring in. "Holy shit, Beck. I always felt weird about how she acted around you two, but couldn't put my finger on it. The mourning ribbon is insane. Who does that? Remember at Sarah's wedding when she kept joking about you being boring? We all thought it was weird. This explains so much about group dynamics I never understood." The comments weren't angry or dramatic. They were recognitive. People were connecting dots they'd noticed but never assembled, remembering moments that had felt off but seemed too minor to address. Owen Price, a mutual acquaintance, wrote, "I watched her physically move between you two at the Miller anniversary party. It seemed deliberate, but I figured I was imagining things. Sarah Chen added, "She told me once that Leora was settling and deserved better. I thought she was being protective, but now the pattern recognition was swift and damning. Our friends weren't learning about Maris's behavior for the first time. They were finally understanding what they'd already witnessed. At 9:15, Maris responded, "I can't believe you're making a public spectacle over a simple misunderstanding. The ribbon was obviously a florist mistake. This is hurtful and unnecessary." But people had seen the florist confirmation. They knew it wasn't a mistake. At 9:32, she tried again. "Beck has always been sensitive about feeling excluded. I was trying to give Leora space to express herself without his anxiety affecting the conversation." The comments pushed back immediately. "So you hid a mourning ribbon and flowers because of his anxiety? That's not how you handle someone's sensitivity. That's how you exploit it. The evidence shows 2 years of deliberate exclusion. That's not accommodation." By 10 p.m., Maris had deleted both comments. By 10:30, she'd deleted her entire response thread. By 11 p.m., her social media accounts were deactivated. The silence was more telling than any argument could have been. "She's gone," Leora said, scrolling through the responses. "Not gone, just exposed. There's a difference. I feel terrible. Because you lost a friend? Because I never had one, not really. And I let her convince me our marriage was the problem when she was the problem all along." I took Leora's hand. "She was convincing because she mixed truth with manipulation. We do have quiet periods. I could notice you more. You could ask for what you need more directly. Those things can be true without making our marriage broken." But she wanted it to be broken? Yes. And when that didn't happen fast enough, she decided to declare it dead anyway. The responses continued through the night, but I stopped reading them. The truth was out, the evidence was clear, and people were drawing their own conclusions. I didn't need to monitor or manage the aftermath. Transparency had its own momentum now. Monday morning, I made coffee and arranged fresh flowers in the crystal vase. White tulips this time, simple and clean. No hidden messages, no private jokes, no funeral symbols tucked among the stems. Leora found me in the kitchen, watching steam rise from my coffee cup. "Any regrets?" she asked. "About telling the truth?" "Never. About how we told it. We let the evidence speak for itself. We didn't attack her character or make emotional appeals. We just showed what happened and let people decide what it meant." "And what do you think it means?" I looked at the flowers, bright and honest in the morning light. "It means quiet men aren't invisible. It means manipulation requires darkness to survive. And it means some people mistake patience for weakness until they discover the difference." "What's the difference?" "Patience chooses the moment to act. Weakness never acts at all." The vase sat peacefully on our counter, no longer hiding secrets or carrying messages of death. Just flowers, beautiful and uncomplicated, in a marriage that was learning to be honest about both its strengths and its vulnerabilities. Maris had tried to write my obituary while I was still alive. Instead, she'd written her own, not in death, but in the kind of exposure that comes when someone finally turns on the lights. The morning was calm, the coffee was strong, and the truth was out. Sometimes that's enough. Sometimes that's everything. Epilogue. 6 months later. The wedding invitation arrived on a Tuesday, cream-colored and elegant. Sarah Chen was marrying her longtime boyfriend, and the guest list included most of our social circle. Notably absent was any mention of Maris Hale. "She's not coming," Leora said, reading over my shoulder. "Did Sarah tell you that?" "She didn't have to. Maris hasn't been to any group events since our post. Apparently she's dating someone new and has a whole new friend group." I wasn't surprised. Manipulators rarely reform. They just find new targets when old ones become too aware. "How do you feel about that?" I asked. "Relieved," Leora said without hesitation, "and grateful." "For what?" "For you seeing what I couldn't. For caring enough to document it. For choosing truth over peace." The wedding was beautiful. Our friends were warm and genuine. The conversations free of the subtle tensions that had characterized gatherings when Maris was present. No one mentioned her absence, but everyone seemed to breathe easier. During the reception, Owen Price approached me at the bar. "I owe you an apology," he said. "For what?" "For knowing something was off and never saying anything. I watched her undermine you for years and told myself it wasn't my business. It wasn't your business. Maybe not, but silence enabled it. Your post made me realize how often we all choose comfort over truth." I ordered another drink and considered his words. The truth doesn't need everyone to speak it. It just needs someone to refuse to hide it. Still, I should have been a better friend. You're being one now. As the evening wound down, Leora and I walked to our car under stars that seemed unusually bright. The air was warm, the night peaceful, our marriage stronger for having survived its attempted assassination. "Do you think she ever really cared about me?" Leora asked. "I think she cared about the version of you that needed her. When you started not needing her anymore, she tried to create reasons why you should. And when that didn't work, she decided the problem wasn't her approach, but my existence." We drove home in comfortable silence, the radio playing softly, the world feeling right-sized again. In the kitchen, I filled our wedding vase with water and arranged the flowers Leora had picked from our garden. Roses we'd planted together, blooms we'd nurtured ourselves. No hidden messages, no private jokes, no symbols of death tucked among symbols of life. Just flowers, honest and beautiful, in a home where truth had learned to live alongside love. The ribbon was gone. The marriage remained. And that, I realized, had always been the point.